This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Well, whatever your weekend plans, drinking Mexican beer, watching Star Wars marathons, or seeking out those Mayflowers, the best way to start it all off is with CityCast Las Vegas's Friday News Roundup. Today, I'm joined by Nevada Current editor April Corbin-Gurnis and CityCast Las Vegas co-host Sarah Lohman, and we're going to jawbone about a tense Democratic primary for Nevada State Senate that has Culinary square in the mix, the jailhouse video of a popular YouTuber who films the police, and the Raiders offering a dream cruise, at least for Raiders fans. It's Friday, May 3rd. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Sarah, April, welcome to the Friday News Roundup.
Good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Good morning, you both. Always a lot of news during an election year, and there's one race that has caught a lot of people's attention, the District 3 Senate Showdown. April, you just wrote about that. That's a district down here in Las Vegas, sort of downtown adjacent. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. All right. So the Culinary Union, noted political powerhouse in Nevada, obviously, is doing something really interesting this election cycle. They have put forth their own candidate. So this is not them endorsing somebody after doing an interview about like what their values are as a candidate. That's something they do all the time, and it's much vaunted. But this is them actively promoting a candidate. It's like, this is our candidate, and you should vote for her. So they're doing this, as you mentioned, in State Senate District 3. That's important to note. It's like a deep blue district. Roughly, if you want the actual thing, it's roughly Sahara. It's between Sahara and Charleston, between the 15 and Buffalo, and then on the west side of Rancho, sort of going up into North Las Vegas. So kind of that general area.
Downtown adjacent.
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so they are primarying sitting Democratic State Senator Rochelle Wynn. The union has said that they are targeting her because she helped lead a bill in the last legislative session that repealed a daily room cleaning requirement that the legislature put into law in 2020 during COVID as sort of a response to COVID. So the candidate that the union has put forth is named Gioconda Hughes, or Gio. She is the daughter of the union's former secretary-treasurer, also widely known as Gio. But Hughes does have an impressive resume sort of in her own right. She's an intensive care nurse practitioner who worked through COVID, so she has a lot of opinions about healthcare and how we treat our nurses in particular. She's been involved with politics on the back end for years, sort of sitting on different appointed boards and being involved with union stuff on her side with nurses also. And so she's promoting herself as like a labor candidate more broadly. But the race has really divided Democrats because we don't normally here in Nevada see a whole lot of super competitive Democratic primaries. So this will be an interesting race to watch. And it is important to note that the winner of this primary is like almost guaranteed to win in November in the general election.
Because it's a deep blue district.
Yeah, just really quickly, April. So the Culinary Union is putting up a challenger candidate in the primary to the sitting state senator. What do we know about the background of Rochelle Wynn?
So she is the first Asian American Pacific Islander to serve on the Nevada State Senate side. And so that's sort of a key note. She's also led efforts on home health care nurses. Nevada had a big legislative push last session to increase the minimum pay for home health care nurses. A lot of them were making like roughly $11 an hour. the legislature passed legislation through Medicaid reimbursement rates to sort of up that, required them to pay them more. So a lot of them got sort of automatic bumps to $16, $17 an hour, sort of overnight because of that legislation. She's also been a big champion of reproductive rights. Which all of the Democrats really have been. So she's currently airing ads that sort of highlight her efforts on that front. She is a lawyer by trade. She has a multi-generational family. She has children, and she also lives with her father. Her father and father-in-law live with her, so she kind of has that perspective of generational families. It's just an interesting story in herself. She hasn't been, I will say, a controversial senator beyond this daily room cleaning bill that the Culinary Union was very mad about.
Yeah, real quickly, April, and then I want to ask Sarah a question about the impact of this. Is this unusual to have a primary challenge from a stalwart political organization like Culinary that typically supports the Dem candidates?
It is. They are, yes, it is definitely Culinary Union flexing their political muscle. I think the general consensus is that there's a broader sort of message that they're sending. They're not just sending a message to Rochelle Wynn specifically, though they say that, that it's also like, hey, Democrats, if you're not in step with us, if you are not in lockstep with us, this is what can happen to you.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, where the muscle here lies. It's the district will still be Democratic, right? And that person will ultimately still vote with Culinary 90% of the time, probably. But it's that 10%. It's that, like, this bill. That's where the muscle is.
I mean, I'm really intrigued by the between the line stuff, but ostensibly, Culinary's beef seems to stem from this housekeeping bill. Sarah, do you think that this bill, this kind of, I don't know, micromanaging legislative edict telling casinos how often they have to do housekeeping is something worthwhile for the union to risk so much political capital on?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, please go ahead, because I'm like, I don't fucking know. I mean, I can see the perspective, though, because it's during COVID, right? So there's this battle between wanting a room to be clean, but also protecting your workers. And obviously, if it's the same person within a hotel room, you don't need it cleaned every day, right? So, I mean, that's where the rub is, too. And it does make sense to me, honestly, to be able to request a room cleaning whenever you want, as opposed to, like, automatically having someone come in every day. That can also represent a loss of wages, so it's a really complicated issue. April, I'd love to hear your more informed perspective, though.
No, I mean, I think you're getting towards it. I think the argument that was made at the time during COVID, again, this is happening during a special session early in the pandemic when we really didn't know sort of how things would play off and how devastated the economy might be for a long period of time, right? So there was an argument to be made that Nevada needed to have a very public, very strong showing about our protections for health. So they were like, this is not just a casino saying, or a resort saying, hey, we're going to do daily room cleaning. This is the whole state, the body of the state, the whole state saying, we care so much about the people who come to us that we are mandating this and we are requiring this. So that was the sort of argument that was made, that it was like, yes, obviously there's the interest of like trying to protect workers and make sure, because we all knew that they were going to get hurt, and they did, still, even with them, the employment went down, but like, there was this argument that we needed to sort of have the strongest footing, and this was it. It is, and Rochelle Wynn has defended her position. She said that this bill needed to be repealed. She has pointed out that the provisions that were passed in the original COVID bill were always meant to sunset. They had in them markers that would trigger them to end. But those triggers won't happen because the data that triggers them isn't being collected anymore. And so because things have changed, she was like, it needed to happen. It needed to happen. It was just that Culinary didn't want it to. So she sort of made that.
Well, on this bill, it does seem to be a shift of focus from a health-oriented bill to a financial-oriented bill for the protection of, employment amongst the union workers who, again, have a contract with the resorts to talk about things like this. What other political implications do y'all think of this race does it have for other legislators in the Valley?
I just wanted to remind y'all that one of my doctor's office still has clean pens and dirty pens. Do you remember when that was a COVID protected provision in the early days? Like washing
the dirty
your
pens
chips?
Scare the F out of me, and they shouldn't.
I mean,
I've been living with
pens.
dirty pens my whole life, and now all of a sudden, because they're in a container marked as such,
Yeah.
I feel like they have bubonic plague on them.
if I touch the dirty
If I touch
pen,
it, I'm
that's
done.
It's
Yeah.
over. Yeah. So this is, I think it really speaks to a different era. I mean, obviously the bigger question here is, all right, so the union is there to negotiate between the employees and the managers, right? It's interesting that they're both saying, hey, don't step in between the work that we're already doing to protect our members. But then to do that, they're raising a political candidate. So they're both saying be involved less, but also we're going to be involved more.
And I think that other unions have put forth candidates like this. The Nevada State Education Association did this a few cycles ago, where they had a few handful of candidates that ran against the caucus, the Democratic caucus candidate, and at least one of them was successful and is a sitting assembly person now. And so you see unions try to be more involved and like put forth candidates who they really know will do that, especially if they're, sort of against the grain in some way, against the majority party. So, I mean, I think the real implication here is like if they are successful, because, on paper, Rochelle Wynn has more, she's more better known. She's got a record. She's an incumbent, and she's sort of well-liked, in the community. Then if they're successful here, they could do this in a lot of other places. They could do this in much more competitive districts. They could do this elsewhere, I think. And other unions could also take note, because Culinary Union is, clearly the one that we call the powerhouse and like the one that is the union of all unions here in Nevada. But there are other strong unions who might also go like, hey, if they did this, maybe we should start doing this. So maybe we'll see more of this.
Well, I will say this. I have talked to some other legislators, and they are all really looking at this because this is sort of an anomaly for them with a serious candidate against who's essentially a rising star in the Democratic Party for like future races. Which could really kind of harm the Dem Party altogether. In other words, I think they're like, well, if Culinary pulls this off, they're going to be able to bully us into some very specific legislation that we might otherwise want to either compromise or ignore. But if they lose, we might be able to brush them off a little bit because their threats of primarying us is a little more empty. Maybe they pick such a high-profile race because if they lose, they go, well, Rochelle is just such a great candidate. We could do it to a lesser candidate. And if they win, then they get all the power in the world. How crazy these behind-the-scenes politics are. And
just one final thought on it is that Culinary has said that Rochelle Wynn was a leader on this bill. She did present the bill to committee hearings and did help lead the effort, but she wasn't actually the bill's sponsor. The sponsor of that bill, so like the actual true leader of the bill, I guess you might argue, was Senator Marilyn Dondera-Loop, who is not up for re-election this year, but she is up next cycle. So if you think this issue might be going away, it depends on how this election cycle goes, but we could potentially see this as near as the next election cycle for these guys.
Yeah. Arguably one of the most important primaries of our election season. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
All right, let's move on to our second topic. A self-proclaimed First Amendment auditor and citizen journalist, a guy very popular on the YouTubes apparently, got sentenced to jail, and he sent messages out to his followers. Sarah, what's this all about?
I mean, first of all, I would say he's medium popular. So he has 570,000 subscribers. Still,
You're not a Millie.
Medium popular on the YouTube, right? Okay, strap in, you guys. Strap in.
Ready.
So this story is about Jose Chili de Castro, or Jose Chill de Castro. I'm not sure. I've heard it both ways. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail after he was found guilty of obstructing justice for interfering with a Las Vegas police traffic stop. So de Castro is the host of the Delete Laws YouTube channel. That's Laws with a Z.
I was hoping it was.
Absolutely.
Did not disappoint there.
Delete Laws. So here are 3 acts. One is the traffic stop. Okay, you guys know I'm not one to side with authority, but everyone in this situation has treated this man with more patience than he deserves. I'm already showing my opinion on this story. So in the original video, it's police body cam footage is what you could see. A woman is pulled over for a traffic stop. You can't see her from the body cam footage, but you do see him. And the issue is that he is filming, which is absolutely illegal, but he is basically walked up to the window of the woman who's been pulled over and is interacting with her, okay? So you could hear the cop on the body cam footage, and you could see his actions too. And he says to de Castro, hey, in this tone of voice, hey, you can film, but I need you to back up. Do not engage with my driver. She deserves privacy. I'm warning you, back up or I'm going to detain you. So, okay, so that's act 1. So de Castro does not back up. You can't really hear what he's saying. He gets detained. He goes to court. In court, he calls the cops a pig. He calls all cops pigs. He calls the specific cops a pig. He calls all cops pigs. And the judge very calmly replies, I'm not going to permit you to speak to anyone in my courtroom in that manner. And if you don't want to apologize, I'm going to hold you in contempt. He was specifically also calling the cops in the courtroom pigs. So Zimmerman, the judge, Judge Ann Zimmerman, sentences him to 6 months in jail. The final act is that he releases a call from prison on Delete Laws. It's a 13-minute rant to petition the judge for his release. Here is one of the lines. I did not listen to all 13 minutes. It's been a tough week, and I did not want to do that to myself. But here's one line that caught my attention. It's about the judge in the case, who he calls multiple times a tyrant. And he says, Zimmerman is not her maiden name. It is the name of the cop she married 2 decades ago.
True.
Even after they divorced, she kept his name, which means Judge Zimmerman loves cops and I do not.
Okay. Well, arguably Judge Zimmerman loved at least one cop.
That is my take on it. She loved a cop. And you know
She's
what?
now married to a defense attorney, by the way, but
That's nice, David.
Too.
She loves all defense
Conspiracy.
attorneys.
although I'm not going to pipe in whether or not she's a tyrant or not. She is a friendly of mine, an acquaintance, but I have been in court with her, and I definitely have opinions which I will not share. So, y'all, is this guy an important defender of the Constitution, keeping cops accountable, or is he just a dick? And I know you're both going to say, can't he be both? But
No,
what's
I
your
was
thoughts?
not going to say that.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that either, honestly.
I was going to say the latter.
Yeah, he seems to swing pretty libertarian, like masquerading as a maybe far right Dem. He's in that weird place where maybe it all meets in the middle.
I mean, isn't there a place for this kind of action by citizens to film the cops doing their job?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's absolutely legal. Even the cop in the situation acknowledged it. He said, you can film. Everyone is very well versed in the fact that I think that it is important to audit, to document police action. But usually you film from a distance. I do think that the woman in the traffic stop has a right to privacy, and she's right up in his camera. And
we don't know her position on this, though. I mean, I searched
true.
and searched, and he obviously had a little bit of interaction with her before. He might have asked for her permission.
Yeah, maybe.
We just don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're right. But in general, especially with traffic stops, the sort of activist, encouragement is you can film, or you at least, just stop and observe. You are allowed to observe police, and you are allowed to be a witness. And I think that's an awesome thing. But this policeman was also very clear. He was the video is there. De Castro is right up in this woman's window. And he is actively interfering in what seemed to be a very calm situation. So,
April, in this last plea to his minions to barrage the judge with pleas to release him from jail, he calls himself a journalist repeatedly. Is he a journalist?
No. He's not.
Why not?
Okay, so I'm not going to be here and say that journalism is not a spectrum. I get emails on the daily, not the daily, maybe weekly at least, telling me that I'm not a journalist because of, I work for a progressive organization that's clearly in the hands of Steve Sisolak and stuff or whatever.
So what is and isn't a journalist then?
So, I mean, I think one of the key components that makes it so clearly that he's not a journalist is that he is actively doing things. Journalists are people who are reporting on something, who are explaining something. And like people will criticize a publication like mine because they think that we are editorializing it because we're offering context or we're putting it into perspective of something, right? We have this broader sort of editorial lens through which we look at things, which is it's an editorial journalistic decision that we can have a whole conversation on, right? He's not doing that in his videos. He is going into situations and yelling at cops, calling them pigs. Like a journalist is not going to do that. He is instigating things. He's an instigator. He is pushing things.
Inserting himself in the situation.
And inserting himself in the situation. There are times, obviously, when journalists are detained, and that is unlawful, and that is terrible. And that is why you do see pushback on things like that, and when things are recording. But the difference is often, and usually, that those journalists are bystanding, that they are not doing things, they are not escalating a situation, they are recording it, they are watching it. And even when you look at sort of like citizen journalists and these amazing people who have taken videos of, police.
I mean, George Floyd is
exactly.
the best
That's
example.
what I'm thinking of. Those
that
people.
Would never have been known but for a citizen with a cell phone.
And that has big implications for them.
teenager.
And that is, and that's a huge thing. And in that instance, you could call her that she was saying that she was a citizen journalist in that moment. But was she behind the camera calling that cop a pig and saying
I don't remember there was yelling at the police officers.
They were
to
telling
stop
him to
what they were
stop.
doing.
Yeah, in that
but it
case.
wasn't, but that's different. That, you know what I mean? Like that was, they were doing something in that case. They were not, like the guy was not beating the woman who was being pulled over. He was giving her a ticket or whatever.
April,
you know
you've
what I mean?
made a really important point that I want to point out that I didn't quite realize before. He is calling himself a journalist because it's illegal to detain journalists. That's it.
It's not really
Not
illegal
illegal,
to
but-
detain journalists. There are implications of the First Amendment as it relates to the freedom of press, but journalists get arrested all the time. Trust me. I've defended many journalists who've been arrested at protests. I just want to take one little aspect of this. I appreciate that, both of you have kind of assessed from the video that has been released that the police officer was fairly patient.
Amazingly so.
45 seconds of patience. Not even 40 seconds of patience. It went 40 seconds from first command to back up to I'm now arresting you for obstruction. That's less than a minute. And, there is an ambiguity. And look, I think the guy was being more than assertive. I think it was on the verge of aggressive. I think that was probably unsettling for the police officer in a lot of ways. And certainly that was testified at the trial because they actually had a full-blown trial about this.
Right.
But at the end of the day, why not make the police officer say, look, sir, I get where you're coming from. If you could just hear me out for a second, here is the area where I feel that you can be. If you dispute that, you do that at your own peril. But it wasn't that sort of accommodation to the citizen. I believe that police officer had made up his mind fairly quickly. If this guy doesn't move far enough away from whatever idea I have in my head, I am going to arrest him. And certainly 40 seconds, 45 seconds bears that out. And shouldn't there be maybe a more cohesive policy for the police to be able to interact with these guys, even when they are dicks?
That's a great idea.
That's a great point. I think that he's not making that argument, though. You know what I mean? That's the problem with him, is that I don't think he's getting from where you are, which is that is a well-rationed argument, but I'm not hearing any of that from him.
Well, I don't know.
His is you shouldn't, the Constitution is a lie or whatever.
David, you've made a ton of great points too. And you're right. It's not illegal. Being a journalist adds another layer to things. I think that you've made some really excellent points about the speed at which it happened. Also, I have to say, spoken like a true defense lawyer. There you go. I loved the perspective and you totally turned it around. You're totally right. But it was the whole thing was a very super calm interaction. DeCastro seemed to be escalating the situation.
Yeah.
He was very, very close to the woman. He was between the cop and the woman at this point.
Yeah. And officer safety comes up as a concern, although, one guy has a cell phone and there's that. Let's finish with this. He got 6 months, the maximum in jail, which he's now obviously does not like at all. He's reaching out to his 500,000 followers to petition the court to get him out. Was that sentence too much for even what you guys both believe to be his outrageous conduct?
It does seem high, but I don't know what that seems like a lot. Sorry, that seems high.
It seems largely based on his courtroom conduct, which wasn't great. But, he wasn't charged in contempt of the court. I don't know, David, what do you think?
I think the debate about whether the judge imposed a tyrannical sentence is one that will probably play out on YouTube more so than in the courts.
Well, at the moment, I feel most sorry for the judge then, because internet people are sometimes the worst. Sometimes awesome, sometimes the worst. And anyone that maybe follows an account that ends with a Z.
Laws.
Always a little sus. All right, let's move on to the third topic, which is maybe more fun. I don't even know. The Raiders, the official Raiders website, is promoting a event with a private company to let Raiders fans go on a fancy-ass cruise sometime next spring in March of 2025 with unnamed Raiders alumni. So that could be anyone. I don't know. Jim Plunkett. I don't even know if he's still alive. He's the only Raider whose name comes to brain. A lot of the classic, like when the Raiders were great, are unfortunately not with us anymore. And they go down to, basically Puerto Vallarta and Mazatlan, and that could be a lot of fun, I guess, if you like, football players telling their crusty old war stories. Is this a fun time? Have either one of you ever been on a themed cruise?
I have never been on a themed cruise, but I do think that I see the appeal. If you were a Raiders fan and you want to go on a cruise, these are two things that you could do at the same time. There's a lot of these types of cruises. Like if people are not aware, like I get ads for them all the time because I think I'm in the demographic of people who go on cruises, I guess now. I don't know.
Comedy cruise, cooking cruises.
Well, you got the kids, the Disney cruise. I have friends who go on the Disney cruise with their kids. There's a Disney cruise.
There's one of my favorite, like Weezer has a cruise that you could do. Yeah, there's
oh, now you're talking to
the Gen Xer.
There's
pop punk cruise 2025 or whatever. There's all sorts of different cruises. There's book talk cruises where you could go, there's all
City
kinds
cast
of
cruises.
City cast cruises.
Just kidding. Not yet.
I get the appeal though. Not everybody wants to, with great respect to the people on this podcast who are very much in the know and very hip about what's cool and trendy. A lot of us don't have the time or inclination to do that, and we just have one hobby, and it's the Raiders, and we want to go do stuff that's the Raiders or whatever.
I guess a multi-day cruise.
I have been on a themed cruise, but I sort of brought my own theme.
Of course you did, Sarah. I love you.
What does that mean, Taylor?
No, it means wherever you are, that's where the party is. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. So I took a Cunard cruise. I went in part because they're known for their food, which was amazing and delicious. But I went specifically because it was a transatlantic crossing from Southampton, England to New York City. And I went at the end of January because that's when my grandmother and her family immigrated to this country. She's Scottish, was Scottish. She's deceased now. And they left from Southampton and came into New York City. So I wanted to have that actual experience. So that's what I mean by I brought my own theme.
That's cool.
It was cool. It was definitely experience. It was extremely boring. It's not a cruise to Mazatlan. It's just 6 days of ocean. It was super amazing to come into New York Harbor, though. That was truly incredible.
Yeah.
And go by the Statue of Liberty and think about my grandmother.
Yeah.
It is a cruise line that tends to focus on an older generation. So the only other people I would say under 55 on the cruise were the people in the show, and they were explicitly not allowed to interact with visitors. So we would just sort of stare at each other from across the room. And everything costs extra money except the food. So mostly I ate a lot. And I don't regret
I think
that.
that's what people do. The two top activities on a cruise ship are eat at the buffets all day and or get norovirus.
The food was incredible. Cunard did not disappoint in that respect, yeah.
And no norovirus.
No. It was totally.
Awesome.
I washed the hands a lot, the old hands a lot.
Yeah.
I did have a cabin by the engine room. I was very poor.
What would be your dream or nightmare Vegas-based theme cruise?
I have one that is both. It is
at the same time?
At the same time.
Still loving you, Sarah.
Buffet all day. And it's just a buffet-themed cruise.
Buffet fee.
Which you would
Buffet
argue
Buffets through
everything.
history.
that like cruises are already buffet themed, but not like it was in the 70s through the 90s, which, by the way, we've got a buffet history episode out there. Buffets started here in Vegas, and then cruise ships actually learned from the casinos. Like cruise ship buffets were based on Vegas casino buffets, which I think is really, really cool.
Right.
So buffets all day, both my dream and my nightmare.
How about you, April?
I mean, I'll be honest, as long as said Vegas cruise has like a 2-story kids quest where I can drop my kids off, I'm there.
Bye.
I'm
Have
there.
fun.
Like, have
A
fun.
leave your kids behind theme.
Yeah, no,
have
they're
sitters.
on the ship. They're
It would
just
be like
in
Home
the
Alone,
kid.
though. You would never have to see them, and they could have their own adventures.
Exactly.
No, so,
And
okay,
there are cruise ship minders for the kids, too.
but like, what about like an old school Vegas-y type cruise? You know what I mean? Like where everybody where everybody agreed to dress up like the Rat Pack and be old school. You know what I mean? Either that or like an obnoxiously like neon, like the inside of the Peppermill.
Oh, yes.
All the time. Like, just imagine 7 days of that. Like, you would jump overboard probably, but it would also be amazing. Like,
See,
I
I
just
was
you have to be
envisioning
really campy. Like,
With your kids, I was thinking on the camp level, a Circus hotel themed cruise.
Obsessed,
100%.
David.
I am obsessed.
100%.
Mine is probably dream and nightmare too. All the almost bins of Las Vegas lounge acts in one place, like not the bad
Oh, God,
ones,
David.
not the great ones, the almost bins, like the ones that have sporadically shown up in different venues all over Las Vegas. But then you would mix in like the shows that were maybe a little too much for Vegas, like ahead of their time. I know for a fact that on the Virgin Cruise Line, Misbehaving, who's been on the show, who did Mavericks, a Cheap Shot, which is a favorite, did the Misbehaving game show on there. And I think that
Great.
plus other Vegas acts of that, ilk, although that would be one of the better ones, would be a fantastic adventure.
Do it.
The ones that really don't hit you, you could just leave in one of the ports. It's like
Not leave the whole cruise, just like go.
No, they'd have to leave the whole
You're
cruise.
just gonna
It's like,
kick 'em off,
hey, welcome
like-
to Mazatlan.
Oh, you
Irv
can vote them
Stapler
off
and
like
the
a reality
Staplerettes.
show.
Yeah, it'd be like a Survivor version of lounge acts, and
Yeah.
like the acts that don't cut it get left behind in Puerto Vallarta, which that's
This
not so bad.
sounds like we should write a business plan.
There you go.
It sounds dark.
It wouldn't be a Friday News Roundup without a little bit of light, shaded by a little bit of darkness. April Corbin-Gurnis, Sarah Lohman, thanks for joining us on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks, David. Nice to see you, April.
Yeah.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our executive producer is Sonia Cho Swanson. Our producer is Layla Mohammed. Our newsletter editor is Rob Katchelreese. And our hosts are Sarah Lohman and me, David Figler. Music is by OG Moose, Epidemic Sound, and All the Kimonos. We record the show on the traditional homelands of the Nuuvi, the Southern Paiute people. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Hey, also tune in this weekend as we will give you some bonus content, special mayoral coverage. Don't miss out on that. And then we'll be back again on Monday morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. Raider Rusher. Do you know that mascot? It is literally the silliest mascot in all of the NFL.
What is it?
Raider Rusher is like a giant football head, like a face with a helmet with no torso on a pair of legs.
Oh my God, he's amazing.
Well, footballs
Just
don't
Googled
have
Amazingly
torsos,
scary.
David. So
I love it. I love him.
Oh, I hate it.
It's disturbing. It's
He has
like
a face. He's a football.
it
that's-
kind of reminds me of Buzz Lightyear without a body,
Yeah.
haunting my dreams.
I
I
really
would go
don't
on
like
a
it.
cruise with him. I would go on a cruise with him.
I
You
would go on a cruise with
him.
him, though.
You'd play
He's-
shuffleboard with that
He's
cat.
doing a
Absolutely, I
lot of
could win.
shots. Yeah.